All right, we got the recording going. So welcome all to the Madison Fabric User Group. This month we're doing everything virtual, online only, but we'll likely get back to some opportunities to be in person at the Madison office in at Baker Tilly. Really appreciate you guys joining. Kick it off to the next slide here. Quick agenda. Welcome everyone. If you haven't attended this user group in the past, thanks for tuning in. Keep things pretty low key here. Really like to get good presentations. Typically a main presentation for these monthly calls. We also love having maybe some smaller side presentations. So don't think about if you're interested in a presentation or presenting with us in the future. Doesn't have to be 45 minutes or an hour. If you wanted to show something off, a little show and tell for 15 minutes, 10 minutes, what have you, we certainly welcome those little segments. We'll go through our main presentation, some Q&A, and then we'll do a wrap up. But I want to welcome Matthew Barter to our user group this month. Really appreciate having him on board here. He's one of the police lieutenants of the city of Manchester, New Hampshire. Just getting to know him right before the call here. So nice to meet you, Matt. And Matt and his team have been designing some different dashboards for KPIs tailored for police leadership. The one tool he's going to show off today and talk through enables detailed incident analysis and enhances problem-solving efforts within the department. So really interested in kind of seeing what your strategy was there and how that kind of flushed out from a realistic standpoint and showing that off. And then certainly we'll do some Q&A as well. And really interested in kind of seeing what you guys have built. Connected with Matt on LinkedIn. Thank you for being out there, Matt, so I can gain a little bit more of your background. So certainly connect with Matt afterwards if need be. And I think from there, I'll turn it over to Matt to kind of dive into the presentation.
Awesome. All right. Thank you. Appreciate you having me tonight. Excited to be here and talk about this project. I'm pretty passionate about it. I'm going to try to share my screen here. Let's see. All right. Can you see the screen here?
Perfect.
All right. Awesome. I was hoping I'd make that work. So, good afternoon or good evening, everyone. My name is Matt Barter. Like Scott said, I'm a police lieutenant in Manchester, New Hampshire. If you're not familiar with us, we're a small city, about 115,000 people. We have a police department of about, I think our authorized complement is about 270 officers. So for New Hampshire, that's pretty big. We're kind of the city in New Hampshire and the urban space in New Hampshire, and so we have urban issues we deal with and problems that we have to tackle. And my passion is around using data to inform those decisions and using data and evidence-based policing practices within the department. So that's really what I try to push forward and drive forward. For those of you who are in Madison, I have a little bit of a connection there with, so I'm a National Institute of Justice lead scholar, so it's a lot of data nerds like myself who kind of combine throughout the country and really work on projects like this and try to drive evidence-based policing. So Sean Barnes is the police chief in Madison. Kim Allen is a lieutenant in Madison. Both are lead scholars. I've been able to connect with them quite a bit, and you have some good people there in Madison. So
absolutely, that's pretty cool.
There's my connection. Yeah, there's my connection out there. So your chief is you're very lucky to have Sean Barnes as your chief of police out there, which we have the same. So that's the connection. But this project, I'll kind of dive into what we're doing here in Manchester, what we have done. I have a pretty good career so far at Manchester PD. I worked in patrol like most police officers do, but in 2013-ish, I really started taking a deep dive into data and crime analysis and how we could use that in the police department. And really for me, it was, as I'm driving around patrolling my beat, I always wanted to know, like, where's the best place I can go to be most effective as a police officer? And when I started digging into crime analysis, there's a lot of really good ways to do that. And so I started looking into use of predictive analytics and things like that. Made a pitch to my then chief that we need to really use and leverage our data. And I found myself in crime analysis and the crime analysis unit and started building out a project. And so I did that for a couple of years, really became a lover of data and data-driven strategies, started to learn about data visualization at that point. My career kind of transitioned. As part of digging into that data, I really identified a lot of issues we were having with gun violence, and that brought me to doing some of those investigations. So I was assigned as a federal task force officer to investigate gun crime with the ATF. Got promoted out of there, and most recently, a couple of years ago, got assigned and promoted to the chief of staff position. And in that, we really started looking at ways that we could be better as an agency, and projects and technology and things like that we could bring on. It had been my goal really since the 2015 timeframe to build out dashboards for interactive dashboards for the agency, for command staff. I felt that data was needed. I wanted our executives to have that ability, and really all of our police officers to have that ability to be able to look at a dashboard and understand what's going on in the community to help inform their decision making. So we were fortunate to get a grant through the FBI NIBRS program. So NIBRS is the National Incident-Based Reporting System. And that's what, whenever you hear crime stats talked about in the news media, it's all reported through NIBRS, or it should be now. There's agencies still catching up. But it's the standardized way that police departments report their crime data to the FBI and to the government. So we have this data, and the NIBRS program wants us to use and leverage this data, and we were able to get a grant to build out these dashboards to use both internally, but also have public-facing dashboards to help inform our community. And with that, we are fortunate that as a city, we partner with SHI already. And so being able to kind of build on the relationship we already have, we connected with them and said, you know, I'm a big Power BI guy. I've liked Power BI for a long time. I know SHI had some really skilled people there. They connected us all together. So on the call is Dominic and Andrew from SHI. And we kicked off this project last year. It went on. We had some hurdles to get over, just working with city issues, but we worked for several months to build out the dashboard that I'm going to show you today. And so we'll dive into that. And then if there's time still at the end, I'll kind of talk about the future and where we want to go. So I put together the agenda, kind of what I want to talk to. Talked about Manchester PD. The dashboards that we're going to talk about are the NIBRS dashboard, really the one that I worked on with Andrew and Dominic to get built out. The process we really used was like I'm trying to think of the right term for it, but like kind of a coaching mentorship type process where Andrew and Dominic helped train us in the use of the product really well, coached us along the way so that my team and we gained the skills to be able to build out other dashboards for use in the department. And so that's what you're going to see today is the one we built together with SHI, and then an additional one I've built out just using our calls for service data. I'm really going to start with talking about the models that influence the design. And that's what I'm kind of big on, is using the research and the evidence base to influence the design of the dashboard and how we can leverage those good principles so that they're effective for the end user. And that's obviously a key goal. And then if we have time, like I said, we'll talk about thoughts for the future, data sources I'd like to see, some of the goals I have in building these out as well. So when we talk about KPIs and data at the Manchester Police Department, there's two big data sets that we use. We have incident data, which is based off of police reports that police officers write. So there's a lot of fields of data there. There's also usually a long text narrative, but I'm kind of more concerned about the data fields for this project. So you can imagine there's a lot of data we collect there. There's even more data we collect in calls for service. So these are the calls essentially to 911 There's limited information in there, but generally that can be pretty rich information because it hasn't been cleaned up, or there's no bias in that. There's no one that says, yes, this crime happened, no, that crime didn't. So it gives us a kind of broader look as to what our police officers are doing every day. So for the incident dashboard, the NIBRS data dashboard, I really wanted it to be used in a problem-solving manner. So I wanted the pages of the dashboard to follow this problem-solving model that was developed by Jerry Ratcliffe, who was a pretty prominent policing scholar. And he developed this problem-solving model called PANDA. And PANDA is actually not about the panda bear, but it's a nod to police cruisers over in the UK where Jerry is from that used to be called panda cars. I think they still are called panda cars today, but it works out quite well. So the PANDA model stands for doing a problem scan, analyzing the problem, nominating a strategy, identifying decision makers for that problem, and then doing an assessment at the end. And really what we are going to key in on for the dashboard's sake is the problem scan phase of this model. Analyzing the problem is important, and then also the assessment phase. So when we started thinking about dashboard design and exactly what type of data we wanted to show on the dashboard, I wanted it to reflect this model and the goals of this model that you see here. So the key part to the analysis, well, let me go back here. The problem scan is really identifying very quickly and simply that there's an issue going on with something. So we'll say maybe it's thefts from motor vehicles, maybe it's shootings, whatever it might be, it's using the data to identify that there actually is a problem going on and hopefully catching it before it becomes a much larger problem. So that's a key part, number one. Let's identify that there's an issue, and you'll see how we did that in our dashboard coming up here. The second phase is to analyze the problem. That's a lot more intensive, but I wanted to give really everyone at the police department the tools to be able to go through a process, which we call this voltage process, and have the dashboard give them that information so that they could do this on their own. They didn't have to make a request to crime analysis and have to wait maybe a week or two. They could really start to dig in on their own. Maybe there would be a need to go to the analyst, subsequently to get more detailed information or make sense of the information a little better. But I wanted the dashboard to be there so that they could do it on their own and get an idea up front. But also I made it so our analysts could use it as well, right? And have it be a tool for them so they're not having to redo a lot of different processes every time they're looking into an issue. So voltage stands for victims, so identifying trends around victims. Offenders, what you see here is like a gang type of list of known offenders. I'll get to that a little bit more in a second here, but it's really understanding what are the commonalities, patterns, and trends among offenders. Locations, where are crimes, where's the problem occurring at, where are they clustering at? This is a version of a heat map that we use using street segments. We didn't use it in this project. This is just another example of it. Times, so when are these incidents occurring? That would be important as well when you're developing a strategy. Attractors is, is there something nearby, a location that's attracting crime? Is there, we'll say, a park that a lot of people congregate at, and it causes problems? Is there a corner store that constantly is attracting, they're selling alcohol to underage or something like that? That could be an attractor. Not so much involved in this dashboard, but a part of this problem-solving model. Gangs and groups are the same. So this is a social network analysis that we do of kind of folks involved in gun violence in the city. But we want to know, are there gangs and groups involved? And then are there enhancers? So for example, if firearms are out there and they're easy to get for offenders, that's an enhancer. Same with drugs, being an enhancer to crime problems, understanding that. What we're really looking at on the dashboard side is these first parts. So we can really look at data around victims, data around offenders, locations, and times. That volt part is what we modeled the dashboard on. So now I'm going to dig into the dashboards, and I'm going to switch over here. So give me 1 second while I do that. trying to figure that out here. Give me 1 second. I apologize. Of course, it's not showing up for me. There it is. All right. Can you see the dashboard now?
Yep, looks good.
All right, perfect. All right, so this is the main screen of the dashboard that we developed. And before I get into this, let me explain a little bit about the back end and some of the challenges that we had to overcome. We worked with SHI to do that on. So, you know, if I had it my way, we would be, you know, a Microsoft 365 customer and be able to use all the cloud products. The city doesn't see it the same way based on some contractual things. They like on-prem systems. And so we had to use the on-prem version of Power BI server. And Dominic and Andrew, chime in if I'm getting this mixed up or wrong, but that's the process we went with. So we have internal dashboards that run off of the server, and we can see if we're on the network, which the city network, which I'm on now. We developed public-facing dashboards. We have to do a little bit different process with, but we do get them refreshed every day, and we work through that problem there. So that's what you're seeing here. You know, I think it works decent for us, especially we're dealing with criminal justice information, which is protected. So it does help us ensure that we're compliant with that. Nothing you're going to see today is going to have any of that not otherwise publicly available criminal justice information. But you'll get to see like kind of the interactive nature as to what we're doing here. So to begin, when I just talked about the problem, the Panda model and that problem scan phase, the first part of problem solving with policing, the first thing is there a problem? Is something going on? And that's what I wanted to try and reflect with this main page, is be able to provide that quick overview for anybody, mainly for police leadership though, is there a problem going on? Is there an issue that I need to be concerned with to dig in a little bit more? So we created a date slicer across all of our pages. So this refreshes every day, so we can get a look at it every day. I am the day shift lieutenant, so I'm in charge of our day shift at the police department. So I can filter by that, and this is being slow for me. I don't know why that is, but I apologize. I was hoping to really dig in and show you all the cool interactive features we had, but it's wanting to be slow for me. And then also by sector in the city. So you can see I have the different sectors laid out here. So I can really dig in on each sector and see if there are things going on that we need to be concerned with or things like that. The dots on the map are, this doesn't help a ton here in this view because there's so many dots. The really idea was I wanted people to drill down further into into the different areas to get a better idea as to where clusters might be going on. So under these two filters, we have an overall look at crime, and NIBRS breaks down crime into person crime. Historically, you would have heard that called violent crime, but NIBRS now refers to it as person crime, property crime, and society crime. Property crime would be things like thefts or mischiefs, and society crime would be things like our drug offenses, could be some weapons violations, things of that nature. And then arrests, what are we seeing trends with arrests? So we have totals here. I don't think totals usually give a good, idea as to what's going on. Like it's just a number. You don't know if it's going up or down. So I wanted to make sure to have some type of a trend associated here as to are things going up or down. So you can see if there's a spike or something like that. So we can see on this day here, there was on 7/24, we had a lot of incidents going on. We had a lot of victims. That's how a person's crimes are counted, as number of victims. And so it gives us an idea as to what exactly is going on. So if there is a spike, we can see it and reflected here. Over on the right side here, we have trends, and I made this a static table that does not change based on the date filter because I wanted there's the only way I could get the measures to work really, and it I wanted to give that again high level overview as to, okay, in the past 28 days, so short term, are these crimes going up or down? How about the past 90 days, and then how about in the past year trend? So we can see these society crimes, right, over the past 90 days, we're down 8%, but recently we've had an uptick. So of course it's smaller numbers that's making this percentage go up, but it's an idea. So okay, what's going on there? Do I need to investigate further and understand what's happening? So for each of these areas, this is where we can start to dig in and start to do more of that voltage assessment, the analysis piece. Now that we dig in, so we'll say I want to look at this society crime and understand what's going on. We can do that here. So I can really look and see what's making up, and my screen is a little bit off and I'm not sure why, but we can see what's driving these crimes. So we see you can kind of click through the different crime types and then try to understand what we're seeing for trends. We can see that drug narcotic violations are the highest number here, but this liquor law violations has the highest, has an increasing pattern here. The reason being there were none, and the liquor commission came in and they did a joint enforcement of all our stores, and they wrote a lot of citations, or a number of citations that day. So that's why you see that uptick, and that's why we see the 28% increase from the past 28 days that I showed you. So that's good to know, right? We dug in and we saw, okay, it's not that we're having some type of disorderly conducts are out of control or something like that, but we can dig in. I wanted to create some other tools for folks to understand what's going on. So we use like a statistical process control type of idea here with looking at upper, two standard deviations from the mean over the past 3 years for each 28-day period in the year for society crime, right? And so if our blue line in 2024 jumped above, that would be a problem, and that would be a true spike in crime that we would need to tackle. So this is one thing we built in so that we could kind of track those things here, and then to be able to provide like detailed information for our folks, just listing out here's a table with the actual case numbers and then a link to our records management system that they can launch the case if they want to read about what exactly that was. And of course the filters work for digging in on individual places on the map. So if I want to see what was going on here, things of that nature. So that's kind of the more detailed look, so you can get an idea as to what's more so driving these crimes. I'm not going to go into the persons involved data from here, but this is where we can look at, just because it has, I can bring up that slide in a minute here. So I'll come back to persons involved data, but the event data is just another screen that can help us with that, locations of crime and the time that the crimes are occurring, and then just some other information that could be helpful for us. So again, we can filter this by our sectors or our shifts, and then we can look at the heat table as to, when are these things occurring. So when I look at our society crimes, Mondays at 4 p.m. for whatever reason has the highest number going on. It's a small number, so I don't glean a lot from there. If I really wanted to look at it, I would probably just like knock this out to a few months to get a better sense as to when these things are occurring. So 1 a.m. Sundays into Mondays, for whatever reason, we're having a lot of these types of society crimes, trespasses, drug arrests, things of that nature, some reckless conduct, which is generally a firearms offense. So we can really start to see here quickly, when are most of these society crimes happening? It looks like to me it's on our midnight shift. That's the shift that starts, we call it midnight shift, starts at 11 p.m. But we can see that there's a lot of clusters here, right? And so that could help inform us as to our deployment strategy as to when we're going to look at things. Repeat addresses is important. 405 Valley Street, that's our police station. So a lot of reports get taken at the police station. That's a data quality issue, to be honest, if I were to look at it. But if we don't have an address, we'll put it at the police station. So That's why that's so high. But these other ones are important to us. 199 Manchester Street, 443 Chestnut Street. These are all known locations to me that, again, if we're looking to deploy resources or really dig in on the problem, we can see, okay, what's going on at 199 Manchester Street? When are these occurring and what's going on? And are these driving? Is this a driver of the criminal activity that we're looking at? So let me pause real quick because I'm spewing out a ton of information. Does anyone have any questions or thoughts or things they wanted to bring up?
Yeah.
All right.
I just more like that. Just a quick comment. I like the heat map, if you will, from like day of week, and then with the hours across the top. Obviously, that drives a good use of data visualization to try to highlight where some problem areas are really quickly. Then you get to see it on the map, get to see the different breakdowns below and the tables below. Yeah, that's really slick to try to drive insights super fast. And then obviously, I like what time range are you typically looking at? Like usually like 3 months or?
Yeah, I'm going to use usually the 28 days, past 28 days to like, for me, especially as a lieutenant, like understand if there's a spike going on to try to get ahead of it. If I'm putting my analyst hat on, I'm probably going to go back 3 months, and then I'm also going to go back, probably the same time frame last year to understand. We have seasonality, just like in Wisconsin. I'm sure you have similar seasonality effects. We see a lot of seasonality impacts on crime as well. So that will help us understand, as well. So.
Funny, we work with different industries, even like retail, restaurant franchisees, things like that, and there's like the events, more like what's happening in your city that might have driven some sales or driven activity, right? Do you try to marry in any data of like, hey, there was a festival this past weekend in Manchester, and so maybe that's a cause of a spike in some criminal activity. Do you have that type of data, or is that like a maybe a nice to have someday?
So it is a nice to have. When we built out our predictive policing model, so we worked with IBM on that and used SPSS Modeler a number of years ago to build that out. And we were pulling in weather data. We were pulling in some event data towards the end of our project it was a little bit tough. We were essentially getting like emails about the events going on at the arena in town and things like that. We had some goals to pull that information in to help inform this. There's a lot of pushback about using predictive analytics and policing, and for a good reason. If the models don't have the right data, they can become biased very quickly. And really cause some problems. So we always try to be cognizant of that. But with some of that pushback, we kind of closed down that program. But my hope is in the future, and kind of showing how data driven can help us, that we can, and showing that we're using the data responsibly and ethically. And I think with the proper oversight as well, we can start to hopefully use some of that here is a goal.
Cool.
Do you ever end up having any time biases against certain hours or for certain hours based on the police being in the area or not? So, like, let's say there's a shift change that happens at like 8 a.m. or something like that. Is there a accounting for that, or?
Not so much, because we stagger our shift changes so that we're not completely depleting the road. One thing we do see, and we actually know from the research quite well, we do something called hotspot patrols, which is when we identify hotspot areas of crime, we will deploy officers and ask them to do hotspot patrols. We do see the bias then when the officers are present, and then after they're present, when we have enough presence in an area that we are deterring crime. So we see that, but I won't say. Trying to think. Yeah, not a ton with like shift change overlap stuff.
Okay, thank you.
And so those are the big, you know, these are the main pages here that we look at. So I have the similar pages for crimes against persons, crimes against property, and then same those event details and person details on those types of crimes. So I'm going to show you another page here in a second. Let me see if I can put that up. So you saw the. All right, are we back to my presentation here?
Looks like it.
Yep. Perfect. All right. So this is, I just redacted some information on this screen. So this is the example of like the persons involved. So this screen here gets to the assessment of victims and offenders, that V&O of the voltage process. And I made it one page. I didn't separate out a page for victims and a page for offenders. I just built in the filter for it. So, and that's this involvement type. So when the officer or whomever is using the end users in here, they can select the involvement type. So they can select the offender, they can select the victim, they can select witnesses if they're interested in witnesses for whatever reason, and look at the trends there. And so we give some broad information up top: age ranges, genders, race, ethnicity involved. The age ranges becomes really helpful for, you know, if we do have a spike in crime. So example, we used gun crime. We were doing a deep dive into gun crime, and we found that our youth from that 18 to 24 range really were the drivers of gun violence, but also being involved in gun violence. And so that was important as we developed interventions, was making sure that they were geared towards the youth population. So that's where that comes involved. The race ethnicity side, we made that mostly for our public facing component of this, because the community wants to know and they keep asking. And so it's a good transparency thing for them to be able to see that. The repeat involvements, that's where we can look at, do we have repeat victims? Because that is something we can intervene on, maybe, perhaps. Then do we have repeat offenders as well? And that would obviously be very important, because if we have a repeat offender over time, that's somebody that perhaps we want to target for enforcement, or make sure we're really partnering with the courts on their cases and things like that. Relationship is important too. Are we dealing with mostly domestic related crimes, which typically a lot of our crimes are, or is it stranger crimes? Because that's a very different response. Right, if we're dealing with stranger assaults or stranger on stranger robberies, very concerning. We won't, you know, and those are things we'd want to dig into. So that's why the relationship description is important. Again, the list of cases, and then being able to link into reports is part of this. So overall, this can be a good source of information for folks as they dig into kind of what's going on with the people involved in these crimes. So that's the high-level overview. We just have this, and each of these data points, sorry, I meant to say this before, each data point is one of those NIBR's data points that's collected that we have to submit to the FBI each month. And so that's why we included so many of these, and they're included in all the police reports. And then key for us from a data quality portion is these are required fields within the police reports, so the officers can't submit them without entering the data, so we don't have a lot of lost data, which is huge. And then prior to this project, we actually set up a new position just to do data quality assurance for us, to make sure that these things are right. Because, and it's probably the same in your organizations, but cops are great at finding the workarounds for not having to enter data. So if there's a way to get by one of those validation errors, they will find it and not put the info in. So we have a person to make sure that info gets put in right, and we don't get stuff rejected from us. So, all right, I'm going to go back to the dashboards. And then, so lastly, I wrap up the look at this dashboard here. Some things that I would, going to continue to work on improving is, so Dominic suggested a book to me called Now You See It, about data visualization after, well, I think he suggested this to me while we were doing this, and I failed to look at that book. So I do want to go and play with the color schemes and the colors that we're using and things like that in here to make it a little bit more accessible and kind of meet a lot more of those standards that the book discusses that I think are very valid. So Dominic, thank you for that. That's going to create some more work for me, but we'll get there. We'll get there. So, but I did kind of go with the, like, I wanted to look cool for our officers. So hopefully to get some buy-in on it. How are we doing on time? We're still good on time?
Yeah, looking good.
Perfect.
And yeah, now you see it. Is that the Stephen Few book? Great book,
Yes.
by the way.
Yep. So
my only complaint is that he hasn't made Kindle editions yet and no ebooks, so I have to have my paper copies.
Yep. Same here.
But all good.
Matt, I do have a question on
Yes.
the last report you have with the crimes. You have the person, property, and society classes there, and the total of arrests. And you mentioned that the person crimes are the quantity of victims. Do property and do the crimes tie into the arrests there, or are this property and society kind of similarly measured as person?
No.
Property, perhaps.
So yeah. So person crimes they're counted by number of victims. So you could have one shooting incident. We'll say that there are 3 victims, right? So that's going to be counted 3 times. The property and society crimes are based on number of offenses, and why I can understand a little bit, but as to why they do that, but it does change. So has that influenced arrests? Well, really depends on case clearance. I can tell you the number of cases we clear, meaning we've made an arrest in persons crimes is a way higher percentage than it is in property crimes. So it's just how many of these that we investigate do we actually make an arrest in is going to be reflected down here. But on the dashboard, we're not really going to see that relationship.
Interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Matt, you might be hitting this later on, but what have been your strategies to kind of drive adoption amongst the rest of the police department?
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. This is actually a good time to bring it up. So one of my goals has been in trying to really push and implement evidence-based policing has been making sure that it's that the data is top of mind, that we're talking about it, but also that our supervisors especially are trained in this problem solving. So in that, I was able to, work into our 5-year strategic plan as a department that we talk about data regularly, meaning we have like ComStat style meetings, which is essentially kind of executive level meetings that historically we've used those to really talk about gun violence. And I added to that talking about overall crime, and the driver of those meetings is this dashboard. So this dashboard gets eyes in front of it in those meetings every other week, which I think is important, right? It starts to socialize the use of this for all of our most of our supervisors who are involved in that. So they're seeing it, they're talking about the data, they're understanding the data. That then goes into the problem solving piece, which we still struggle with. I think a lot of police departments struggle with it. Some are very good at problem solving. I wouldn't say it's new. We do it. We've always done problem solving, but I like following the models because the models work, and we know the models work. And when you miss key parts in the model, that's when you're not going to be effective, or you're going to keep going back and doing the same thing. So in trying to better problem solve, I put on a training in March where we put all of our supervisors through it, which is about 100. And no, not quite that. It's probably about 50 supervisors through and train them in the whole problem solving model. Really broke down each piece of that Panda model so that they understood it, but also as part of that, train them in the resources they had available to them, i.e. this dashboard, to help them with that problem solving model, those first parts especially. And so that's how we're trying to socialize it. We keep, pushing it out as well. I will say my captain and some of the other captains are good at asking the lieutenants to make sure they're reviewing these dashboards so that they're understanding as to what's going on. We can, like many organizations, we can get wrapped up a lot with the internal stuff that's happening, right? Managing rosters, schedules, overtime. you know, all of that stuff. But public safety is our primary priority, and so that's really why I really wanted to make sure these were front and center. And this next dashboard is actually a good segue, is probably the one that we used most. And this was kind of the second phase of the project. So actually, before I move on, any other questions? We can certainly come back, but any other questions on the NIBRS dashboard? Okay. Yeah, and if you think of something, just you can throw it in the chat or call it out in a little bit later. So the second phase of this project, so really using the skills we gained from working with SHI, with Andrew and with Dominic, took it into building out a calls for service specific dashboard. And this is, again, this is kind of what our police officers are doing. So for me in patrol, this is really telling. And this can really be some of the first indicators that we might have a problem with something. And also tells us what our cops are doing, you know, from a proactive standpoint. So the first page is, this is like what I do in the morning when I sit down at the desk as the patrol shift lieutenant, kind of in charge of the patrol division for the day shift. I look at this dashboard. It updates every 3 hours. You know, that's due to, you know, what we have to do on the city side of getting the data over into the Power BI server. And these are pretty big data sets, and so we refresh them every 3 hours. Which is fine. Our call volume doesn't change that much that we would miss something. And so we felt like that was a good compromise with the city to not overburden other processes. So this is what I sit down and look at. And I look at, okay, what are proactive calls? So these are the calls the officers initiate, traffic stops, things like that. And reactive calls are things that the public calls up and they call to report and they want police assistance with. So reactive calls is important because this is really truly what's going on in the community. So I'm going to key in on this one and say, okay, our reactive calls are up 5% in the past 24 hours. That's, you know, not a ton. I'm not going to be overly worried about that. But if this number was large, I'm going to take a look and wonder why, which brings me to the next pane over here. And so I can look at, okay, what are the top things that are going on here? So we have we've done 41 traffic stops in the past 24 hours. That's up about 50% compared to normal. So that's good. So we just have some indicators there. Green being that's good, red being that's bad. So our special attentions are down, our business checks are down over the past 24 hours. The hotspot patrols are down in the past 24 hours. So these are things that as a lieutenant, I can go to my people and say, hey, we need to get more hotspot patrols in today because you did very few yesterday. And that's you know, we gotta pick that up. So I can use this to figure that out. And then reactive calls too, I can see, okay, what's happening, right? Homeless issues, a lot of communities struggle with this. We do certainly. It's up a lot. We've had 7 calls from the public about homeless issues over the past 24 hours. And so I can click on this and start to understand a little bit more about what's going on with it. And these are spinning to, I think it's just because I've had this open for a while. So this is actually refreshing again as I click on it. I apologize. I'll come back to that once it filters down through. You know, we have overdose challenges here in Manchester. This is something that I have my analysts really keying in on because an overdose spike is something that we want to track in real time so we can deploy public health resources on those. So we can see if there has been overdoses that will show up here in this pane. The repeat calls for service. Again, something I got to work on is sorry about that. So you see how the interactive nature works here now that the screen refreshed. You know, I have to work on why on this screen my table here is shrunk down, but we'll work on that to get it to work. But I can again see that if we've been to an address more than once, and that's important too, because if we've been back to some place really more than once in 24 hours, there's something going on there that we need to figure out. And again, then I can just look at also just a full look at the calls here. Going kind of faster here. I know I'm running down time, but now I can dig in more. So I use this a lot as a lieutenant as well. This looks awful, right? I can't make anything out of this map. Again, I designed it because I wanted us to be able to look and I wanted people to drill down. So now when I start to drill down, I can really get an idea as to what's going on. So accidents on day shift, I can really see what's happening. So for example, I've used this recently to identify that this stretch of road right down here, I'm having a lot of accidents in over the past month, and that's where I'm going to direct my traffic enforcement to. I want them to be stopping cars down here in an attempt to bring down those accidents. So again, you see the trend here. It gives me an idea that yep, accidents are up. We've had a lot of accidents. So those are the types of things that we can do here. You can look at response time. This number has some data quality issues. I won't go into that. It's just the way stuff gets put in on dispatch. But this number is important. Is how long are we spending on these calls? So when I talk about wanting to bring down accidents, my cops are spending on average, 70 minutes on an accident call for service. It's a lot of their time. And so by driving those numbers down, I'm also freeing up cops to do more good proactive police work out there. And then just more information as to, day a week, time of day that these things are going on. So again, for the accident on day shifts, I can really see when these are happening at. So I can ask for that traffic enforcement during specific time frames. So it's a real quick overview. In the last couple minutes, I love talking about the dashboard, so I'm just going to talk about a couple of the other ones we've designed because I'm pretty happy with them. I talked about overdoses. This is a dashboard that we created to share with public health. Health department didn't really have any visibility on real-time overdoses going on. We know when there's a spike, we want to deploy the resources in real time. This has been hugely effective for us. So fortunately, we have not had a spike in quite a while. I kept this trend graph up here. So this is interesting. There's a lot, you can see there's a little bit going on here. Sometimes the fire department gets called for an overdose and the police department doesn't get that message, and vice versa. Sometimes the police department gets called for an overdose and fire department never goes. So I had to find like an average, which is this dark blue line, to understand, to kind of give that, all right, this is what's probably happening in the community. But when we have spikes that happen, which is generally any of 5 or more, that's going to trigger a response system that we put in place where my analyst notifies the health department then gathers up resources that they have predetermined, and they can push out into the field to try and mitigate impacts that are going on, usually making contact with folks in those involved communities to let them know of the spike, and also to make sure Narcan's available and things like that. So this has been really effective for us. This has been one that we use quite a bit, and actually it's been nice to be able to share this as well with our health department partners, public health partners.
Hey, Matt, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
My name is Jacqueline Fitzpatrick. I'm the AE for SHI for Connecticut and Rhode Island. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. This is insanely incredible information. And I'm like thinking, how does number one, I'm going to ask you about the overdoses. So you said Department of Public Health. I was just pinging Dominic and Andrew about that because I was like, this is something you could put into like mental health, Department of Mental Health, like for their own dashboards. And like, then is there any way of transferring over, or how do you get that information over to your Department of Public Health? Or I don't know if you guys have a Department of Mental Health or not, but they have 2 separate in Connecticut. And I'm just wondering, like, when you give them that information, do they do anything with it? Are they working off a dashboard? I guess is my question.
Yeah, they had built out dashboards, but they were all historic, right? They were all old data, which is not helpful. But they didn't have the same visibility, right?
That's insane.
So we have the data,
right?
And so with our because they're on the city network, I was able to just add them as users to this page.
Okay.
So our director of overdose prevention accesses it multiple times a day. So does the public health director. So they stay updated. We are talking about just making it a public dashboard.
Yeah.
It's just working through some of the, making sure no one gets upset about that.
Yeah. And then my next question is scalability. How do you so I have Rhode Island and I have the state police, the Rhode Island State Police. It's a smaller, obviously it's the small state in the union, but how do you see it scaling to like the state police level? Do you, or can you even think about that? Like, this is great. I mean, Manchester, I'm familiar with. I'm only about 20 minutes from you, but I mean, it's it's contained. Like, this is the city of Manchester. It's contained in a way. I'm looking like, what do you think about scalability to the state level? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there's incredible opportunity for across the landscape, because state police has access to a lot more data points, right? Not only are they getting info from their troopers, really from the cars in the field throughout the state, they're also getting that. I'm guessing in New Hampshire, state police controls. They work they're hand in hand with the state 911 system. That
Oh,
data set that 911 collects is very rich, because you can imagine they're not
like it.
getting everything that's happening in the state,
Correct.
but they're getting most of it for emergency stuff.
All right.
And so that you could really flag things very quickly and early, especially when you're talking about things like overdoses.
Yeah.
Early on,
Any,
before
any
they
of the information. I mean, the dashboard's incredible, but like we stopped here, but I'm like that's obviously like top of mind for a lot of people right now. But even
Mhm.
the other information, I was just looking at it for scalability to the state level. But like you said, if their data is that rich, I mean, this would be like this is just a really great way to kind of like kick the door in for, an audience just to hear it
Yeah.
out, because it's I just like I said, I was just wondering what your thoughts were on scalability to the state level.
Yeah, no, I think it's there, and I
Thank
think
you.
our state, I think our state has that capability, like has the back end infrastructure to support this, especially if they're willing to do cloud stuff. That makes it way
Yeah,
easier.
that's good to know. Okay, thanks so much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. And then one last dashboard I'll show, just because I think this is also helpful and of interest, is I made like I call it my patrol officer stats dashboard. This is a big model. I probably will have to work with Andrew and Dominic on refining the model, because it takes it's a lot of data pieces coming in together. But I'm able to look at my different officers and understand what's going on with them, and what they're doing. And that's helpful, especially as a lieutenant, as we evaluate our officers, understand where our strengths might be, and then hopefully in the future, use these data points as part of an early warning system. So we all know about horrible incidents across the country where police officers have done horrible things, and those people should not have been police officers in the first place, right? Or there was a history of things going on. I believe we can use this data to help throw up those flags ahead of time, and either catch bad officers before bad things happen, or maybe catch something that an officer's having a hard time struggling, and get them some help before they do something that they wouldn't have otherwise done. And so that's the intent behind this dashboard here, is really get a look at. So this is looking at a whole year. So you're looking at some big numbers here, and we can filter this down. But this officer, I color coded it if based on how they compare to their peers. So again, I went with the two standard deviations from the mean. So if they're above that, they're going to be green. If they're below that, they're going to be red. So this officer does a lot of proactive work, which is why he's green. Less reactive work, which is fine, because he's out there. His assignment is to be proactive. So he's out there doing what he should be doing. You can see that here. You can see the number of arrests he makes, the reports he writes, all that good stuff. These are important numbers, like pursuits and uses of force. So if they have a significant high number of uses of force, maybe something to look into. You see 4. This is 4, and it's green, meaning he's in the higher tier amongst his peers. But since January 1st, having 4 uses of force, A, we can look into all those, see if there's patterns. Not hard to do. B, that's not abnormal for a city like ours to have that. That's kind of what happens. But then we can dig in more, kind of again, this is refreshing because I had it open too long, so now it wants to go back and refresh, I think. But we can look at, see if any of these others come up. Oh, I apologize, but I'll let it run here for a second. But I know we're getting close to the top of the hour, so we can start to wrap it up here, and we can certainly answer any questions or other comments people have and wanted to bring up.
For like this sort of officer stats, do you get any pushback at all from various officers? Because I know like when trying to implement dashboarding solutions for a call center, for example, I have had pushback from call center employees saying, hey, I don't like being looked at this deeply.
Yeah.
And I imagine that for police officers, there might be something along the lines similar. I was just kind of curious how that kind of rollout and conversation ends up going.
Yeah, there definitely is, and there's a little bit of pushback, but we've tracked these things on our evaluations for a long time. I got a little bit more detailed with like breaking down like proactive versus reactive calls. We couldn't do that previously without building it into a model like this. Like our data doesn't show that, so you have to use some calculations for it. But it's always been there. This just is for our supervisors. I guess it gives them a one-stop shop to look at it. And so that was kind of the intent behind it, is instead of our supervisors spending a lot of time going to different systems, they're able to dig in, use one dashboard.
Do you allow like the police officers to view their own record?
Yes, they get a copy of it. They don't have access to the dashboard because we don't want them fishing around on other cops, but they get a printout of their version, or a PDF version of it emailed to them.
Cool.
That
So I have,
Yeah, like-
of course, had like a million things more to talk about, and the time went by quick. So hopefully that was good for everybody.
It's great.
absolutely, that was fantastic. Let me
Yeah,
just-
from a sales perspective, I mean, that's insane information to, like, take to, local and state, like state police departments, or even like departments of emergency, reaction. Like Connecticut got like what 12 inches of rain in like 10 hours the other night. They had a state of emergency. You mentioned earlier about the weather, and that was my first thought. I'm like, that's something that they could definitely avail of for something like this. I think this is insane. It's really, really good information.
Yeah.
Thank you, Matt. It's really great.
Matt, I see you've been on the circuit a bit too, and being able to present some of the good work you guys have done. Are you doing any more upcoming talks at conferences or what have you?
I'm trying to think here. So, more detailed towards specific issues, but it is using data. So, for example, with our gun violence, we use a technology called NIBIN, which it matches casings recovered at one location to casings recovered at another location, and using that data to identify the drivers of gun violence. And so that's one of the presentations we're doing in October at the International Association of Chiefs of Police. So I set up a panel to talk about, I do social network analysis with it. I have a colleague at NYPD, and he uses Power BI. He's built out some really good dashboards for linking these cases together for his investigators. And so it creates, I'm actually really excited to dig in on it myself with him, but he's using Power BI to pull that data together to show links between cases and recovered guns, but also being able to, at one pane of glass, pull up the people involved, right? The information that a detective is going to want to know, so they can go out on the street and do interviews and do the work they need to do to make arrests on these shootings. And so that's been really helpful. So we're going to be presenting on that, and like how to leverage that NIBIN data, which is different from NIBRS, so a lot of acronyms here, but the NIBIN data to help prevent and reduce gun violence in cities. So yeah, that's kind of the next big one coming up. Hoping to continue to build out these dashboards and hopefully spread the word too about the data-driven strategies.
Do you have
Definitely.
any? Sorry, another question, Scott. If you had something to say.
Oh no, go ahead.
But like rolling out these dashboards, I don't know, are the data sets that you're working with custom for your city and specific for your city, or are they like standard systems that get used for many different police departments?
Great
Yeah, so
question.
the nice thing, well, I say the nice, every department is supposed to be submitting the NIBRS data. Those are standardized fields, no matter what records management system that the police department's using, that the records management system needs to be collecting so that they can be submitted, whether it's to the state and then the feds, like we do in New Hampshire, or directly to the feds. So it's dependent really on the records management system. And that's going to be key to any police department, is what records management system do they have. Most all of them are going to have a SQL back end, which we can tap into. It's just getting that data connection made. The other pieces for like the employee stats and things like that, we built that into our records management system. And so we collect it all in one place. Other PDs have siloed systems that they use, and so connecting into those could be challenging, but I would hope those other ones would have APIs or something, other data connector to be able to pull that data into the single pane. So that's really, it's the records management system. And then the CAD, the computer aided dispatch, those are usually separate systems. They're usually married together with the records management, but those backend data sets are all fairly similar across PDs.
Gotcha. You can probably detect the upcoming question was, which would be, have you looked at getting Power BI templates built out that you could then spread and provide to other police departments in your area that have similar system setups?
Yeah, I did that as like a side personal project, and I think I linked to it off of my LinkedIn. And
Stealing
so I
your
made
thunder,
it public.
sorry.
Oh no! So I built out a template for like New Hampshire crime stats, just to really show and blog a little bit about the capability with Power BI. So that's the first attempt I've made at doing a template, though. So certainly it's something I know we talked about and trained on. Definitely, would love to do it more.
Yeah, and anytime you can get a accelerator or a quick start for for a new department or a new audience is helpful. So yeah, that'd be right on, Andrew, Dominic, on that question. We deal with a lot of manufacturing and distribution and ERPs, right? Like things like that. We're always looking for ways to kind of streamline the next project. Like, hey, we did this once over here, and like let's plug in your data to the kind of the same template. So, yeah, interesting maybe pattern, and maybe for another presentation we can dive into the back end of how all the data is getting ingested and shaped and modeled for to what you're displaying on the front end. Pretty awesome.
Good stuff.
And anytime you want to come to Madison, Wisconsin, and do a presentation here, I'd be happy to join you, Matt.
Yeah, I got to get out there. I'll come see my friends, and we can all nerd out together. That'd be great.
That's right.
I'll buy you some fried cheese curds.
Excellent.
Some spotted cow and cheese curds. Yep.
There you go.
And then we got CT in Connecticut and Rhode Island, Matt. I'd love to bring you in on a couple of those. That'd be awesome.
Be more than happy to. Yeah.
Thank you. This
yeah,
is great.
Brandon Clark is our connect, I believe. So.
Yeah, he's I think he's Rhode Island municipalities. I have Connecticut's towns and
Cool.
local towns and the state police for Connecticut and just the state police for Rhode Island. But I've got a good contact in Rhode Island for the Rhode Island State Police. She's former FBI and she's running their team now. So this would be something I think she'd really be interested in.
Yeah, let's do it.
Great stuff.
All right. Awesome. Yeah, upcoming events. Our next one is September 18th. If you guys can join us, Chris Wagner, our very own Chris Wagner, MVP, Microsoft, Director of Data Solutions here at Baker Tilly, with myself and Tommy and Braden. He's going to take us through a Fabric end-to-end. He's got a really nice kind of demo that he's done before. And so if you're new to Fabric, want to get a kind of a jump start on what this Fabric thing is all about, Chris has got a pretty good guiding demo, if you will, to kind of go through every step and show you from end to end how to get data extracted and landed and lake housed and get into a semantic model and get it reading into Power BI. So definitely check that one out. And then we've got we're finalizing like October, November, December for the user group. So more information will come out on the meetup site here shortly. What else here? And then, as always, we're looking for speakers just like Matt. You don't have to be a Microsoft MVP. You don't have to be an expert on anything. Please, if you're using anything in the Fabric suite or Power BI, we'd love to kind of have you guys share. So any short talks, anything that's what's new. Maybe you tried something new, and you want to show that off. Anything fun, right? Or a big kind of use case, you built this dashboard and you want to brag about it, please let us know and we'll get you we'll book you some time. Cool. With that, I just want to say thank you guys for joining, and we look forward to seeing everyone next time. thank you, Matt Barter, for presenting today. Very interesting demo and work that you guys are doing. Very important work that you guys are doing there to bring more insights to the policing industry.
Awesome.
Is there a
No, thanks for
location we
having
can
me.
go to access the recording for this?
Yep, I'll get a note out to you guys. We'll get a note out to you guys on the recording. I'll let Chris probably post it, but I'll send you guys a note.
Thank you very much.
Oh,
Awesome. Thanks,
All right.
everybody.
Thank you.
thanks, guys.
you.
Have a great day.
Stay
Thank
safe.
you
Have a
very
great
much,
night.
Matt.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.